Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdicus David. Today I'm joined by Sara and Wyatt of Collective Arcana, the YouTube channel about. You guys do a lot of Pathfinder over there and other RPGs as well.
Mostly Pathfinder 2e since it launched last year. That's our game of choice right now.
Yeah.
Nice. How you guys digging it? I think Friday I'm playing my first session. And we did like a session 0 a couple weeks ago.
Are you playing or GMing?
I am playing.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. What are you playing?
So we're playing over on Master of the Games channel. I'm playing a Charhide Goblin Alchemist Bomber. I was just like, I don't know very much about Pathfinder 2e. I just know I want to be a goblin and blow things up.
That is an excellent character choice
brand.
that you can carry all the way to level 20.
Well, and it's funny too because our mascot is a goblin bomber, and when people are like, "Well," they were asking about character art. I'm like, "Here, this is my character art."
Yeah, I mean, goblins are super fun in 2e, but just 2e in general, we really like it.
Way different than 1e, which we started in.
Right. Yeah. And I've played a lot of different games. I started in 3.0 and 3.5, and then of course Pathfinder 1e is just 3.75 basically. But did a lot of homebrew. I've played some really rules light systems, but I would say overall, as a heavy homebrewer, I mean 2e did a lot of the stuff that I would normally homebrew in.
You did actually. When we were in 1e, a lot of the stuff he had, kind of house ruled ended up being in the 2e book. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's easy for us because nothing changed.
Sometimes you just wonder if they don't have your games bugged, right?
I
know. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were, I had a whole homebrew system that had been running for years, and a lot of it is reflected in 2e to the point that it certainly made me feel pretty good about my game design that and I hadn't been following at all the 2e play tests and stuff, so I had no idea what was going on with it. I was like, I've got my homebrew system, I've got Pathfinder 1e if I want to do something where I can just hand somebody a book and play that. So I hadn't really been following it, and then never planned to get into it. I only really looked at it because of the channel.
Yeah.
And man, did
I'm glad we switched. I like 1e, but I learned how to play on 1e, which I do not recommend. No. That was so complicated.
Yeah. So I really didn't play much. I probably only played a session or two of 1e, but it was it's very similar to 3.5. And just at a glance right now, looking at 2e, so far I'm liking the changes. Like I like the way the character creation worked, and kind of my thing about Pathfinder and 3.5 was like it was a lot of like microtransactions, and like they weren't very interesting because it's like, oh, like I do all this stuff and I get all these +1s and +2s, which doesn't feel very like cool to me, right? But I feel like in 2e, like the choices are a lot different than that, where it does something different and it's a lot more interesting just than stacking pluses.
Yeah, I mean, sort of like you said, like building a character, especially advancing through a full campaign in Pathfinder 1e, it's like balancing a checkbook. Like you're making sure you're carrying ones here and there. And it's a lot of what they call sort of feat taxes, where you're either taking little minor things to get a good thing once they all pile on, or once you qualify for the good thing. But there's a lot of granularity, but never any big impactful decisions that you're really making, besides a few at level 1 that you've then got to invest to get to. And I like parts of that.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy with the changes in 2e. It's much more new player friendly, and as you said, it feels much more impactful, the choices you get to make for your character.
Yeah, because it just felt like some of the choices I made, even in character creation, granted I don't have a ton of experience, I was like, oh, like this one choice would have just been a +1 or +2, right? In the previous edition, but here it's like no, it changes how this ability works. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like I like the alchemist like splash damage, right? You can the one feat lets you, or feature lets you spread it out, or you can just concentrate it on the one opponent, which is kind of more interesting.
Yeah, and as somebody who's new to 2E, alchemist can get sort of a bad rap sometimes because it's not as dramatic as a fighter and doesn't have quite as many options as a wizard. But keep in mind that as an alchemist, especially if you go bomber, but I mean any alchemist can make the bombs. The weaknesses in the way Pathfinder 2E handles them, even one little fire damage on a creature that's weak to fire, you're dealing 5 to 11 damage even at lower levels. And then, if you get that persistent damage on, which a lot of your bombs will have, I mean, that's going to eat things alive. So it's very good. Even that one splash damage can do a lot of damage to a group if they happen to be weak to that element.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we have a channel where we do like a lot of optimizing and talking about it, but we don't actually really play that way. Like sometimes we do for some things, but for the most part, like we'll pick apart something and tell people how terrible it is, and then play that thing in our games just because like optimization and fun aren't really always the same thing depending on how you play.
Absolutely. Well, and that was one of the big problems I think that Pathfinder 1E had, where you almost, especially if you were online and looking anywhere, if you were playing a home game with your friends and nobody had that mindset, you would get by just fine. But especially if you look online about, if you're just curious about how to build your character, you start seeing all these things about, don't even try this idea. It's not good enough to play. Whereas Pathfinder 2E, just the nature of the math, it's super, for better or worse, it's super duper tight. So you really cannot build a bad character in 2E. And like you said, all your feats and things, instead of just giving you little bonuses, they're giving you whole new tools to use. So, it's something where you can't build a bad character, and there's not very many, I won't say no, but there's not very many trap options in the game. So everything is viable, however silly it may seem.
Yeah. The character building is the reason why we like 2E, I think, more than any other system. It's so like story heavy too. Like I was talking to him about how you can just like pick one feat and build your entire character around it because they're just so like flavorful.
The addition of those skill feats and separating them from class feats so that you don't feel like you're missing out on being able to keep your party alive, the thing where they rely on you, but feeling like you can take these really flavorful, unique ability feats for out of combat, for exploration and things like that in other systems you'd be like, well, why would I ever do something that is niche and just for following the guards through town or whatever, when I could have this thing that's going to let me get the drop on enemies. They separated the need to focus. They separated the need to choose between viability and flavor. And I think that's the most impressive thing about the way they separated those feats that you get at every level being different types of feats.
Yeah.
I like how they added the plain touched races where where they're all just options to add on to other races. One of my dislikes for 5e is when they changed the lore of tieflings and Azamars and made them like true races. Like, so coming from like first and second edition, they were always just like, somewhere in your lineage, there was a fiend or or a celestial being. And now, like it's their own race. So it just felt weird to me, and I like the way they handle that. So let's back up a little bit. How did you guys get started with your YouTube channel?
Well,
that's a good question.
So we were, so we had started playing 1E. I've been playing for.
You're probably years. At like 14 years.
14 or 15, yeah. So I've been playing for a long time, and she had been really curious about it. She was working with friends that were getting her into watching Critical Role.
No, it started with Acquisitioners.
That's right, Acquisitions Incorporated.
That's how he got me in.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what is it? I don't understand what you're playing. And so like that was kind of my introduction, which was before we even knew about Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd watched a bunch of that first.
Which is a very comedy-focused type of game. If you were, if you've never seen, I'm sure you have. So it's a great way to get people into the game because it's just silliness, and everyone is just an exaggerated character. But from there, she was a little bit interested. We tried a few times. There was just not a good table cohesion for her.
Not the right chemistry.
Yeah, and then we go to when we were in California, she had a friend who was really into it, so I played with him a couple of times. And
he got us to watch Critical Role, Anthony. He's probably watching.
Yeah. And so he got her into Critical Role, which really just drove her heavily into wanting to play. And
I really love those people.
And then we she was able to cobble together a group from some of her coworkers.
Basically, all of our coworkers ended up playing with us, and one of them doesn't even work with us anymore, but he still plays with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're about 2.5 years in, and so as she said, we had to do sort of we wanted to do the streaming table so that we could use our miniatures, and so we had to get a lot of equipment for that. And then I think we just sort of realized, like, we like doing this. There's content that
we literally just talk about this like nonstop anyway, so we're like, we could just turn it on.
Exactly.
That is kind of how that was kind of the idea when we started doing this. It's like, well, we'd be having these conversations anyway. So, why not turn on a camera and do it? Oh, although when we started, there wasn't a whole lot out there. Like most of the D&D YouTubers were they were doing it to talk to each other. Like they weren't doing it for an audience or to put the content out there. They would just all do like video responses to each other and throw it up there. And it was just like an easy way for them to kind of communicate. And I consider like that, like the first wave of like D&D YouTubers. And then when we came along, we always had the intent of doing it as a business. We didn't know it was going to be like a D&D channel when we started either. It was just like generic nerdy stuff, right? And then we started talking about RPGs more heavily, and then 5e came out, and we checked it out, and we that game just really clicked for us. We hadn't even been playing D&D for a while. We had moved on to Mutants and Masterminds, and I didn't know they were doing a playtest. I didn't know they were doing D&D next. And then they dropped the basic rules. And I was like, hey guys, we should talk about this. And then apparently, we hit it at the right time. There wasn't a lot of people, on YouTube talking about gaming. And there certainly wasn't like a group of guys from New Jersey shouting at each other about it. So that was like our niche in the beginning, being obnoxious.
I mean, 5th edition is just
blowing up.
It's such a huge boon to the community in general, and I mean, even tables that don't play D&D, even people playing like the really weird stuff, 7th Sea stuff, like you're going to see just an increase in interest in it in general, and it's just driving players to every game, not just 5e. It's just, what Wizards did with that system and creating something that is just so accessible and easy to pick up. It's very, very impressive and very just huge for the hobby.
And like it's been like the easiest version of D&D to stream too.
Yeah.
Like I think like really complex systems are tough on a stream because there's too many rules questions and things to figure out.
For sure. And you can see those growing pains with the 2E channels that are streaming there. Like there's definitely more questions there than in like a 5e game. And I mean, a big part of that is, like you said, the rules in 5e are just so light. They're so simple. They're very free form in a lot of ways. And it allows you to just sort of shrug and go, let's do it this way. And everything will roll on. And it's very impressive. And just, I don't think that, any of this would be happening if it hadn't been for how focused they were on getting 5e as accessible as possible.
We all have to thank 4e for tanking.
Yeah, I mean, really, yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, 4E tanking not only inspired them to take a whole different direction with 5E, but it also opened up space within the hobby for all these other games to get a lot more popular than they would have been if 4E had continued the dominance of 2 and 3rd edition. So in a lot of ways, it was probably one of the best things that's ever happened to the community was 4E not being very great.
Well, yeah, I mean, it split the D&D community, but in a sense, it kind of brought in things as well at the same time. Exactly. So Sarah, to what you were saying, my wife actually, we've been together for it'll be 27 years the end of the month, I think.
It's a good run.
And she was not a gamer and was not interested until maybe the last year or two. And now she plays in a couple of the games that I run. So there is hope. I never really tried that hard. I was like, I exposed her to it, but she just didn't seem that interested. And then we tried like playing as a family with the kids, and like that didn't stick the first time either. Now my son plays kind of casually, filthy casual. But my daughter has no interest whatsoever and probably never will. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I'll take it.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I met him, this is maybe weird to hear, but I've never heard of D&D before, which I know like it's kind of weird to say now.
Yeah, it seems crazy now.
But we're from a small town, and like it just wasn't a thing, for me. I think you even said you couldn't find players when you first heard of it.
I mean, I've been wanting to play since junior high. Basically, as soon as I found out that it was a thing, I was like, yeah, this seems like the thing for me.
Which I'm a big nerd. It's not like it didn't appeal to me, but I just literally had never heard of it,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just wasn't a big, we're from West Virginia. Like, there's just not much going on.
Yeah, I mean, in a small town, like D&D used to rely on the cool uncle system of getting people involved in the game, which is, somebody who's already established, knows what they're doing.
Later found out my cool uncle did play by
yeah.
He was holding out on you.
Yeah.
But so you used to rely on having somebody that would already knew what they were doing, already had access to the books, whatever you needed, and would invite you to play. And I just didn't have that in my area. It wasn't until I got to college that my buddy Chad was my cool uncle and was able to teach me the game. And within a year of starting, I was running my own game because I'm a terrible, unreasonable brat and control freak. And I'm getting better, but that's what drove me to GMing in the beginning. So.
No, but you were playing pretty heavily when we met, and one of my close friends played in your game, or her fiance played in his game, and so we would end up at the same parties, but they would be like in the basement playing D&D, and we would be upstairs partying, and so it just kind of happened. But we were together for years before, because I couldn't grasp what it was because I'd never watched it, and then I started watching streams or recorded games, and I tried to play it, and for some reason I couldn't wrap my head around how to do it, and I'm kind of shy with the RP stuff. I'm like, this is weird and embarrassing. I don't want to do it.
You do that all the time, though. You're really good, especially
and I still struggle with that 2-3 years later, however long it's been. But I think you just have to find the right group of people for it to work. And now I'm like, why did we waste 7 years not playing D&D together? It's like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Like, you said find the right group of people, because it is like new, and you got to push out of your comfort zone for some people. And like our group was never really heavy into RP as much. We didn't talk in first person and do all that stuff till much later. And even still, it's kind of like a slower burn. Because even when I started playing the game, there wasn't as much role playing. The stories weren't as coherent. It was kind of a different game. Like it wasn't as narrative as it is now.
Oh, for sure. I think that we have a lot of things to thank for that. Like we have Critical Role, of course, is just an unattainable goal of what RP can look like. But it's good because it's shown people that might have dismissed the game as just, you know, a really complicated game of Risk, and they see that there's so much more to it in terms of the role play element, and just again with the way that 5e backed off of the minutia, the crunchiness of it. And then I would say even with 2e, the way that as I said before, like they've got those RP focused feats, those out of combat feats that, you know, like she said, a lot of them can really inspire aspects of your character. I think the whole industry has shifted more to latching on to that aspect of the game.
Story.
Yeah, it's because, I mean, it's the thing that more than anything else, like especially with video games now, like you can have any sort of experience you want in a video game, but the narrative is always going to be what somebody had planned, and so that's the edge that I think D&D and tabletop games in general.
We don't do anything you plan.
No.
So Chris had asked, you know, what are the advantages of 2e versus 5e? I can't really speak to that. Like I said, I don't have enough experience with 2e.
Well, so I think that, you know, and the last thing we want to do is have an edition war. But I think that for me, I played quite a bit of 5e, but it comes down to, a lot of it comes down to the type of fun you have from these games. For me, tactics are a huge draw, and it's something that I feel that 5e is a little lacking in. There's not a lot of monsters, for example, just have a slam attack, things like that. Like, and in your character choices, I felt like, because again, that's another thing that is fun for me, is unique characters. And it's not that 5e doesn't have a plethora of options. We actually did a video comparing 1e and 5e, and, you know, found that 5e has way more options than Pathfinder 1e just in the core books, which is not what I really thought until I went through and examined it. So it's not that 5e doesn't have options. It's that I felt like after your third level, you know, by the time you're at third level, you've selected your subclass, and all that stuff, and your choices are really over unless you get into multi-classing, which is a slippery slope that can easily not go the way that you expected it to or the way that you wanted it to. And, you know, I am a recovering min-maxer, it should be said. But, you know, for me, it was never about the min-maxing aspect, was never about like just breaking the game or taking it to its extremes. It's always been that I want to, if I have a character that's narratively good at something, I want to be able to back that up with mechanics. And while 5e will allow you to create, it's very open canvas, you can create any sort of concept really. I feel that 2e is more able to give me the tools to reflect my RP choices in my character's build and vice versa. I also think that the 3-action economy, which is huge, is game-changing, so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't have to memorize what type of action everything is. You have 3 actions. You can spend them how you want.
Which we were doing homebrew in 1e anyway.
Yeah, towards the end of 1e's life, they released the Unchained book, which had a lot of optional rules that wound up making it into 2e. And I think it's even in Starfinder. That 3-action economy is, I mean, it's a game changer in terms of simplicity. New players being able to grasp what they can do. Just, oh, you have 3 actions. What do you want to do? And they can just snap in, instead of remembering what's a move, a minor, a standard. You know, that's boring. But and then I think the other big fun is balance for me. One thing that I noticed very early on in 5e was that, and it wasn't, and this isn't a knock to them because it's not their intention, but it really felt like some classes just did not have nearly as many tools. And that's not just a complaint for, you know, I don't feel as strong. That's a complaint for I have fewer chances to take over a narrative situation. I have fewer chances to impact the story because I have this niche here, and this person with this spell can do my niche. So the balance in 2e is really, really good. As I said before, you can't make a bad character as long as you're keeping, and you have a sort of strange point buy system to get your ability scores. As long as you're keeping your primary ability score for your class high, that's the end of the thinking you have to do to make sure that your character can contribute. Beyond that, you can get as weird as you want. make the strangest thing you can come up with, and we've got some strange things.
Well, and that's the other thing. Every time you level up and get these different feats, your character evolves dramatically. Shaking the camera. Your character starts getting all these weird things that you never planned on taking, but then when you're like, because we use Pack Builder, which is an app that it's free and it like lets you build your character sheet and everything on there, and it makes it really easy, especially for new players.
Yes.
But when you're shopping through your feats, you're like, I could be like a really good liar. And then you take it, and then like for some reason my character now is like this incredible liar, which I never planned on doing. So like I think we said last game, I convinced like a whole town that we had done something that we didn't do as a distraction, and we went the other way. Like and it helps you especially as a new player. I'm not as good at building a character yet because the RP stuff is so uncomfortable for me. So this gives me sort of some guidance on who she is. And it happens very organically in unexpected ways.
Like 5 seconds before you mentioned Path Builder, someone in the chat mentioned it. And also, like, when we did our session 0, someone's like, oh, you can get this app. And I was like, oh. And like, so some people came into the session with their characters already. Other people were building them right there. And I was like, I downloaded the app and I'm like, oh, and I'm done. Like, it makes it so much easier and faster.
And you can export it, and like you can print it. Like I print my character sheet straight from it now.
Yeah, you can send your character sheet directly to your GM if it's the kind of GM that wants to have a copy of everybody's character sheet.
We have no affiliation. We just really like that.
But it's free. I think it's still not out on Apple, but you can do some tricks with BlueStacks and get it on a PC and things.
So it's free, but if you want to do certain things, you need to upgrade. It's not that much though. And if you're going to play a lot of Pathfinder, I say definitely it's worth it. D&D Beyond broke me for playing other games. It's like, wait a minute, I have to write things down.
I like having the tactile, the paper character.
I like
sheet.
having the paper, yeah.
But in terms of building and especially introducing people, Path Builder is excellent. And then on the subject of Path Builder and also on the subject of advantages for 2E, the Archives of Nethys. It's an all but official archive of all the rules pretty much as they come out for 2E. So, of course, By the Book support Paizo. They're a wonderful company.
Paizo supports them too. They retweet them, and anytime they do any updates, Paizo's retweeting. Like they have updates. So
yeah, I mean, there's a few words changed here, and a lot of that is part of the way that the D20 open gaming license works, which Pathfinder 2E still uses. But you can go to Archives of Nethys, and that's just a website, and you can see everything within a couple of weeks after it coming out, sometimes a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So if books come out and you're not sure about it, you can see all the new content, you can see all the classes, you can see everything. And then Path Builder as well. So it's just really cheap to hop in and try it out. And then, of course, if you love it, please, buy the book, support the company. But it's a really great thing that you can just try out at no upfront cost.
Yeah, I also like reading from a book, but like for DM planning, prep, and building characters, the digital tools. Also, as a content creator, having a database of everything does make creating content so much easier as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the archives have like art for like monsters and everything as well, so you're not missing out on really anything there. If you want to show people what a Glabrezu looks like, you can show them what a Glabrezu looks like with just a link. So that's really fun.
So when you're not playing Pathfinder, what games do you like to play?
I mean, it's pretty much consumed at this point.
We have 3 actually. You have 3 and I have 2. So we're in 2 together, and then he's a player.
I do.
Finally,
a player.
I know that's like the mythical DM who is also a player. And then we watch Critical Role, and then we watch the Talks Machina and stuff. So basically, all of our time is consumed between those 2 things.
Yeah, and then painting minis as well.
But he has a little homebrew game that we would love to write up and publish if we can find the time.
Yeah. It's a very rules light sort of very Fate and Mini 6 inspired game where the concept is detectives in the 50s and monsters. So it's very like Arkham horror, but also like very Cthulhu, but also much more like it's werewolves. Like you think it's a serial killer, but it's werewolves.
I imagine that would be if we can rope in another game. I really want to flesh that one out because I played it once, and I think I've listened to you. You used to play it more before I started playing, and it was like listening to like a audio book. I was like, what happens next? I think that actually probably is what really got me roped in.
I think that
listening
helped,
to you guys play that.
Yeah.
In California.
Yeah, that was a fun game. And then I think that's like I said, it's been pretty much all Pathfinder 2e since it came out. But before that, I had been, even up until before 2 years ago when we started this game, I was doing nothing but homebrew systems. I'm very much a control freak, and I like to have things a certain way. And I just hadn't found a lot of games that gave me what I wanted. And so, years in development, a lot of poor, unfortunate friends that had to serve as unwitting playtesters. But I found a lot of things that I really like, but we just haven't had much need for anything since 2e. And I'm not saying it's to be all in all or anything. We're gonna try.
Yeah, I definitely want to try stuff now that I'm in it.
Yeah, I really want to introduce you to a lot of games.
Our game is in it's completely a homebrew world, and it's a world that he's been playing in for years. And so it's a lot of building the history and all this stuff. He's got like a wiki for it. It's something else I'd like to publish one day. But we'll be playing and we'll run across a character that played in one of his games, 7 years ago. And so yeah, your world is pretty consuming.
Thanks. Yeah.
So how long have you been playing in your own homebrew?
Since the first game that I GM'd. I've never.
Which was what, like
14 years ago? Yeah. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 2005 or 6. I've never played, besides one shots and little mini campaigns. I've never played anything long term that wasn't in that setting. A lot of it is just I've done the work, I know it, so I'd rather stick with it. There are a lot of worlds I love to be a player in. Specifically, Eberron is one of my favorite places to visit. I just love Eberron, the weird choices that it makes. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the homebrew.
We definitely want to start exploring more now that we're both playing and like I'm not so lost.
Well, we're coming up on the end of our campaign. We started level 2 or 3, I think, and we're 16 now.
Yeah.
So
level 16 spellcasters in 2e, so fun. Oh
no, we were driving in the car the other day, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna level up. Let's talk about my level up."
I broke the game last night.
Yeah, and she found discern location, and that's a really great spell in Pathfinder. If you have an 8th level spell slot and you have a mystery to solve or somebody to find.
Been tracking this thing for like 2 years. I'm like, I know where it is.
Yeah, it's excellent. So that definitely had to put me on my toes to try to figure out how to manage that, because it's fun, but unexpected. But it's 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 a lot.
So Heath wants me to ask you about Trigon.
Heath.
Hi, Heath.
So that's a pretty wide. So Trigon was in one of the first, probably the first game I ever ran from level 1 to level 20. And Trigon was his very quintessential orc barbarian, the one that I measure all orc barbarians against for the rest of my life.
No relation to Raven's dad?
No. No, just yeah.
I don't know about Heath.
Oh, well, he's dead, so you wouldn't have a reason to meet him.
So, what you said you that's about to wrap up. Where do you go from there? Are you guys streaming any of your games, or are they all private?
We don't stream any. It's something that we want to do. But...
I don't know. We're so inappropriate. I don't know if it would go well. We've talked about it a little bit, but
yeah. Well, inappropriate is bad, especially for live.
Yeah.
We used to record our games, and occasionally So, because it was just like our friends that we were playing with. Occasionally, I'd have to go back and be like, okay, what is the thing that has to be edited out now? So,
recorded, but only for us, and we'll go back and listen to see like for example, one of our players made a deal with a demon, which is gonna definitely come back to haunt us later. And so one day we just listened to it over like see exactly how he worded stuff. But so we'll go back and be like, oh, good thing that wasn't live because that was inappropriate. So I don't know that I'm sure eventually we'll at least do some one shots. But for the most part, it's informative, YouTube. Here's how you play 2E. We do a little bit of mini painting stuff on there. We went to Ren Fair and we met up with the Critical Role cosplayers there. So it's just kind of mostly what we're already talking about. We just put on YouTube and then we close the door for the game.
We're very much deep into the just overviews of the classes right now for 2E, and then hopefully we'll be able to get into some more wide-ranging topics once we get those.
I'd love to do one-shots. I think that's something we'd like to do in the long run is try some of these other systems and do one-shots and explore all the different ones, especially the indie games. We did try to do that, and we went to our local game store, which is amazing.
Golem's
Gate in Houston. And they didn't actually have any like published indie games, so I think we'll have to look online to figure out where to start there. But it's definitely on our very long list of videos we want to make.
So a standard question around here from Joe is, what's your favorite dragon?
I love silver dragons. I like the beard. I think it's great. They've got a good attitude where they're definitely better than you, but they don't treat you like garbage because of it. I would say silver dragons. As far as villains go, I like a black dragon. It's just something about those horns.
The skull face.
Yeah. The 5e dragon designs are just, the D&D dragon designs in general are just really good. But
we have a lot of dragons in this house. And we got Kickstarter. We're about to get a lot more.
Yeah, Bones 5 Kickstarter is going to take over at least a room in this house.
Yeah.
Are all the other Bones Kickstarters painted?
No.
I don't think anybody ever paints them all, right?
Yeah, we have a lot.
Yeah.
I've painted almost all of the dragons in the house now.
You have, yeah.
You need
literally on display in every room.
You need a full-on sweatshop of mini painters to get those bones Kickstarters done.
I keep telling my buddy Chad that he needs to come down for a weekend and just down with me.
All three of us just paint all day.
But he plays Warhammer, so he's like, okay, well, it goes both ways. I'm bringing stuff too.
Oh yeah. See, you don't tell them. That's how you get and be like, just come out. We'll come down, hang out. We're gonna drink some beers.
Yeah.
And then you start just putting minis on the table in front of them with paint.
Get some kind of chain around his ankles so he can't leave.
Yeah. Good plan.
Mm-hmm. So what are your favorite types of videos to do right now on the channel?
Well, we've been overwhelmed getting through the class videos, which is something that, at the same time, it's really fun to do. And, I think a lot of people like to have them.
We had a lot of people asking for, like The Witch, for an example. There's not a lot of 2E videos on some of the less, not the core, APG stuff. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get those out. We're going alphabetically, although we're pushing Witch up because, we had a few requests. But, I mean, we're doing those now and they're fun, but I think our favorites, we did the playtest videos. It was fun to do the Magus and Summoner playtest. Is really
the APG playtest was really fun.
Yeah, and then just kind of the new stuff that comes out. It's so fun to talk to people. But the stuff that's not out yet, we get all these comments and just having people to hype with. Like, I can't wait. What do you think this is going to be like? And so that's fun. Mm-hmm. But I'm doing completely different stuff on TikTok from him because he's like the he's in deep with the game and the mechanics and all that. And I'm like, well, I want to cosplay and paint and do the pretty stuff and dice and so I'm getting to like have my own outlet. So I just stick the camera in front of him and make him talk. And then
I apologize to her about once a week for how much she just has to sit and listen to me talk.
Because I edit everything.
And then after she's done editing, I'm probably going to do it more.
Yeah. We did some unboxing videos, and those are fun, but really difficult to film because, they're this big.
So is there anything Wyatt does or says during the videos that makes you want to murder him now, since you're the editor?
Yeah.
This one goes off, and he does good job, though. I'm training him.
I'm getting better.
Yeah. So I used to do our editing, and my wife would walk by and she'd be walking by and be like, "Shut up, Dave," or "Why are you so stupid?" Just yelling at the screen.
I feel like shut up Wyatt all the time.
Honestly, the worst part is we have a very talkative cat, and he'll be talking, and she's like, "What you doing?" She'll just like jump up and start meowing. I'm like, that's really hard to edit out.
Yeah.
That's really, honestly, I think the worst part of it.
Siamese cats, folks.
Don't get a Siamese cat.
Well, I think just, cats in general or animals in general, like they know the internet was made for them.
They do.
So
she feels very entitled anytime a camera's rolling.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I actually discovered you guys through Sara doing the TikToks, and you showed up in my For You page because I watch a ton of like D&D stuff over there. And then I started tracking you guys down and reached out to you. And it's a really cool community over there that's growing. And it's interesting because like whatever you're doing, you have to do it in like a minute.
Yeah. It's a weird format coming from YouTube. But I also feel like, not to be negative, but like on Twitter, I tried for, a long time to kind of find community there, and just didn't, it was kind of negative there. And like, I went on TikTok, I posted one video, and just all these people were just so supportive, and like, I like got more followers on TikTok from 15 seconds than I did on YouTube after 2 years. And I also found a lot of like girls. There's like no girls on Twitter and YouTube, and so it's like this whole hidden community over there. And I'm starting to talk to cosplayers and stuff, which is something I really want to get into, and I've dabbled in. I'm working on a Vexalia cosplay right now, and it's just like our reach got so much further. There's so many more people, and a lot of 2E people on TikTok. Seen a lot of comments like, "Finally, 2E people, where are you all?" And they're out there because like the books are selling out, and so it's so fun. It's like we're digging up treasure every time we find like a little pocket of people. And TikTok was a big pocket. I need to get back on. I've been neglecting it.
So, were you guys doing many conventions or doing conventions at all?
So we've not been to a convention yet. It was something that, she was never super into it until just a couple of years ago.
You're also in West Virginia. So
yeah. Well, I mean, there was, no, there's nothing nearby.
Once I started playing though, like it just, when we lived in San Diego for a while, and it's really expensive there. So like we wanted to go to Dragon Con so bad, but we just could not afford to do anything.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't afford to eat half the time. So
and we were actually planning to go to Gen Con.
Yeah.
But then we were either going to go this year or next year, and then sort of everything.
COVID has ruined a lot of stuff.
Yeah, maybe next year. I mean, it's towards the end of the year.
I'm not confident. I sure do hope I'm wrong,
so,
but
yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
We definitely want to get into that though, because I mean, all we've been able to do is we went to a Critical Role live show, and it was so fun. We drove to Austin, and like it was an incredible experience. So
it was a blast.
That was the biggest gathering of nerds I had ever been into. And I'm like,
Origins is pretty good too. Like Origins, like for the size of the convention and cost, was a PAX Unplugged. It's a lot of fun. I'm a little biased. So that one's actually local to us in Philadelphia. And then we were actually supposed to have our first convention this year, which was like going to be like podcasters, YouTubers, streamers,
Oh, we'd love to get it.
All from the RPG community. And it was going to be Halloween weekend, but like most things, the end of the world happened, and
yeah. Probably will for a while.
Now tentatively we've rescheduled for 2021, but who knows what's going to happen.
I think hopefully.
Yeah.
We definitely start going though. It's something I've always wanted to go to. I never, you went to, what was it called? It was like the original Comic Con.
Well, it was Comic Fest. I mean,
Fest.
It's hard to get tickets to San Diego Comic Con, but the people who started the San Diego Comic Con have like another smaller. When they decided it got too commercialized, the big thing, they started another smaller one. So I went to that a couple times. That's really fun. And I've been to.
Who went to the outside of Comic Con?
Yeah, we did. So I've been to a few comic book conventions, but I've never been to an RPG convention before.
Like a supernatural convention, does that count?
Yeah.
So gaming conventions to me are a lot more fun. I feel like comic book conventions, it's just like go there and spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's not as much to do per se. Or like maybe you want to go get someone's autograph, but then you stand in the line, you got to pay $50 to like get their autograph or whatever. Where gaming conventions is more like, it feels a lot for me anyway. It just felt more like going, hanging out with my friends from the internet. Obviously you can sign up for games. You can also spend a bunch of money there as well. But yeah, so like, Gamehole Con was a lot of fun. And that one's smaller. But it was the convention I went to and did the most like gaming stuff, because a lot of times when I hit conventions for Nerdarchy, I'm there networking and kind of working. And that one, I felt like I did more gamer stuff than I've done at any of them. And it's kind of smaller compared to Gen Con and Origins and PAX Unplugged. So that one's a lot of fun. Gary Con's another one on my list that I was thinking about going to this year, and then, again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
We didn't have the channel when we lived in San Diego, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think we probably would have been more aggressive about trying to find a way. But yeah, now that we're kind of out here and settled down, we're in the middle of the country, so we can kind of go to any of them with the same distance.
Yeah.
So we did want to go to ReaperCon. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, ReaperCon, which is here in Texas, and that's
got canceled.
Yeah, they did it online, but yeah.
Yeah. We're big Reaper.
That just does not sound the same at all. A mini convention online.
Oh yeah. You can't see the.
We would probably spend way too much money there.
We would have, yes, we would have. It's brilliant. It's brilliant on their part to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone unfortunately is saving way too much money this year.
That's we're buying twice as many minis.
Yeah. I'm getting ready. I'm stockpiling.
When things do open back up, do you guys think you'll be hitting any of the conventions? Maybe some PaizoCon?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to go to PaizoCon. I think that would be a blast.
I've always wanted to go to DragonCon.
I want to go to.
I think Jim Butcher goes to that one a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
We're a big Dresden fan, so I've watched some of his panels on YouTube. We actually do watch a lot of panels just while we paint and stuff, even though we don't go to the actual conventions. Luckily, everything's sort of accessible now. So
yeah, but I'd really like to go and just play with some sort of the big event games they do at some of those places, things like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
We were going to be guests at MissouriCon this year, and like the only reason we were going to go, I think the only reason we were really even going to go was because Jim Butcher usually does that one, and like Ted really wants to meet him. And like for him, conventions are a bit harder because he still has a full-time gig and has to like figure in his vacation time and travel and stuff like that. But at least like when things do open back up, you'll be able to write it off.
Yeah. Hopefully eventually.
Business.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So what is your like play style?
So we, of course we
chaos.
Yeah. So I'm a pretty low to medium prep GM. I ran my first actual published one shots earlier this year. I mean, I'd never run anything that was out of a book before. But in terms of that's part of why I play in that same world over and over, is because I know it. I know how the little moving pieces work. And so I really do almost like a sandbox typically, and then it'll usually start as a sandbox. I'll have a few potential plot hooks, and then I basically just
that we ignore.
And then I basically just wait to see what people latch onto, and then if somebody takes a bait on something, that gets expanded upon, and then extrapolates from there. It's one of the things that's been hardest about being digital. Is as a GM who plays that way, it's a lot harder because sometimes your players may not necessarily say, "Oh, this seems fun," but you might just see that, those eyebrows raise or like that little smirk come on. You can tell, okay, they're hooked. I got them there. So that's been a lot harder for me to adjust to, just because of my particular play style.
Because we don't use video when we play online. We just use the map cam, but we don't have like our video.
Okay.
We play in different rooms.
Yes, we don't even see anybody. It's very, very unsocial. But then in terms of the actual gameplay, I tend to, at least in this campaign, I have them moving around a lot, really just going wherever they want and having the world sort of react to them, and at the same time continuing to move if they let something drop. That's my favorite thing, is when they forget about something and then it comes back to bite them because they forgot about it.
That's our play style. We forget about things and then let them attack.
I'm big on voices and silly voices.
Yeah, he is.
Every NPC sounds like a weirdo. But and our game is for the most part relatively serious, but there's definitely some.
Really, you
compared
we just
to
got
something.
matching tattoos that play instruments and we bump our booties together.
That's true. Yeah, that's fair. It's a weird sight for 5 of you, but it's I would say it's not like we're not doing Shakespeare here or anything, but it's very story driven. But
3 of us are new. Like this is our first game for 3 of us, and then the other 2.5 have played before. So one is actually also usually the GM. He just joined our game pretty recently, so.
Yeah, it's just really
growing pains happening.
It's very reactionary.
So your buddy Heath is requesting impressions of your voices.
Yeah, do the little guy we saw in the in-person game.
Oh, gosh, the little imp?
Yeah.
Oh. What are you doing? I don't know.
You can't do it.
I can't do it on the spot. I can't do it on the spot.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. You're not in the moment in the character. It's not the same.
In your game.
Oh, this is Gothrun. He's a orc spirit barbarian. Bury your dead folks. You don't want him coming back.
So I don't play in that game, and I just hear that every Wednesday night for hours, and I'm like,
yeah.
Does your throat hurt after that game?
Yes, I drink a lot of water for Gothrun.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
I know when Adam joined our game, I think when you did a character like that, he's like, you don't have to do that voice. That sounds painful.
No, I have to do it.
Yeah, it's, a friend of mine has his own world called Revlo, and he had put out a Kickstarter and ran a one shot on our channel. So I played this Berndazi, and they're like a lizard folk race. And so I did the whole thing with like a hissy, rasping voice. And by the time I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do that again. Also, so he's a company called Creature Curations. And I actually met him at Origins, and like his booths are easy to find because he makes these like life-size sculptures and does like the heads that are mounted on the walls and stuff. So you're just like walking by, and there's this like weird creature with a beak, and 6 eyes like sticking out. So like they're kind of hard. They're hard to miss.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
We need one of those.
Yeah. If you Google Revlo, it's just Oliver spelled backwards, or Creature Curations. Definitely check it out. His stuff is fantastic looking, and I think he converted. Like he did a campaign for 5e, and he did a campaign for maybe Fate as well that he was running. But it's like it was really cool because it's stuff that his son would come up with, would make, and he started doing his son. His son was like 4. And like, so his son would describe the monster, and then he would sketch it and we'd get the approval. And if he got the approval, then he would like sculpt them. So like, and I think he would like sculpt on top of like deer heads and stuff, like styrofoam deer heads. So like that's like the size, like so the size of some of them, which is super cool.
I didn't have to work. Like I would just be making stuff like that all day. Like that would be so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so now the problem is without doing shows, he's had to stop production because he just ends up with these heads hanging around his house.
He's just got a nightmare room.
I bet his house is really fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's it. And like all the critters are all like bizarre. None of them are like even look close to being like standard D&D races.
Yeah. Yeah, we've dabbled with that because we have a 3D printer, so he'll homebrew something weird and we'll chop up like animals and monsters and 3D print them and glue them together, and we've come up with some strange things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's the fun part about the being in this hobby. It's what I love. It's like you like everybody can tell stories and be creative. So it's a great outlet. Like you might not be able to sing or play an instrument or draw, but I feel like anybody can learn to tell stories and improve there. So it's a great creative outlet for us. It also sounds like your GMing style is a lot like mine. I just like throw out a ton of stuff and see what they do and go with it.
Well, I figured out early on that if I really want them to do something, they're not going to do it. So
yeah.
Pick because they're going to pick anyway.
That seems.
We don't get the really obvious leads. We're like, he's like made this really obvious thing we should do, and we're like, I don't even know what we should do right now.
There's a big arrow with a sign pointing.
Like that literally happened. Well, not literally, but like kind of. Our first game was like this very obvious setup, and we were supposed to like try to join this pirate thing, and we were like, I don't want to do that. I want to do my own thing. And so we just completely, all the work he put into it, we're
gonna sail this way.
So we have a pirate game, but we have a pirate ship that we barely get on because I can teleport us, and oops, sorry, we ruined it.
That's fine.
There's like a Reddit thread that was like turned into a meme, and it's like someone asking for good puzzles for their D&D group, and someone is like, just get a puzzle book for preschoolers, and they're like, you're so mean, and then like the person goes back and like, oh my god, where can I get that book?
I don't think we've solved any of your puzzles in a.
I run pretty puzzle light typically. I think you guys have only seen maybe 3. It's
way over our heads, even though we completely cheated on the last one. I still don't know how to solve it.
It's something where I haven't just had a lot of luck with even some pretty classic ones. I haven't had a lot of luck with players latching on and attaching. I don't throw them out entirely because it's such a big part of like the hobby, like just the idea of having puzzles once in a while, but they're not usually a hit. So. Yeah,
well, it depends too, like what your group likes. Like there is no point in putting out puzzles to a group that doesn't want to solve them. Like I get bored by puzzles, and I generally don't want to do them either. So which is cool if like other people in the group want to, so like they can have fun with that. But I wouldn't want to play where like every session is nothing but puzzles, because that's not my thing. It's just identifying what your group's into and giving them that.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the game, and the draw to it is nobody has to do anything they don't want to do. You don't have to do the escort mission if you don't want to.
I used to write out like really in depth, almost a module adventure like DM prep, and at a certain point, I just got tired of throwing away my notes. And I'm like, now it's like 3 sentences, and I'm like, that should last a while. See what they do
for you.
Yeah, it's about creating a lot of pieces and knowing what those pieces are and how they'll react to whatever the hell my party decides. We just got a bunch of new terrain last week, and I've been trying to get it ready, and she was like, "You gonna use this next session?" I was like, "I don't know."
You got the map camp set up and everything. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I sure would like to, but I don't know what you guys are gonna do week to week.
Players are gonna play, man. You just never know. When I was running this one adventure, for a group, and literally I was just like, all right, like there's a kind of like a spiraling ramp that gets slightly steeper the further down you go, and like they nearly turned it into a death trap. And like there was nothing to it. It was like, okay, either be real careful and there might be some checks, or maybe like pittons and rope. This was not going to be a big deal. I did the most damage to them, with that, because they're all like, I know what we need to do. We need to we need to surf our shields down this.
Hey, like,
that sounds like something we would do.
So the party nearly took themselves out over something that was meant to be barely a minor inconvenience.
That's amazing.
And that is tabletop role playing games in a nutshell, I think.
Absolutely. And then the thing that you think is going to be this big showstopper.
Yeah.
Somebody resolves with, it's like, oh, well.
Disintegrate.
Yeah. It's fun. It keeps you on your toes as a GM. Like it's just because a lot of people forget, I think, sometimes that it's a game for the GM too.
Yeah.
And having that chaos is a big part of what's fun to me, and just trying to keep up with my players and what they're trying to do, and spin it all into something semi-coherent week to week.
So we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
No, thanks so much for letting us do it. I really hope that your viewers will come and check us out over on our channel, Collective Arcana, and maybe see something they like.
As always, the links are in the description. They'll be in the pinned comment after we're not live anymore. It was great having you guys on. You guys have been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make more TikToks. You're really good at it. You're definitely a natural.
Thank you.
All right.
And with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.